It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Welcome to The New Next, a podcast that addresses current events and how they will impact the future.
What do you want to talk about the Roman Catholic Church real quick?
Yeah, so to understand how it came into power, I think is sometimes forgotten because it became the it's still up there. I think it's either I don't know if it's first anymore, but it's in the top three of not just like of a religion. It's one of the biggest religions. I think Muslim might have overtaken it now.
Yeah, it is larger, Muslims.
And Muslims are the fastest growing thing over the past 40 years by far. But Roman Catholicism was a minority Christianity for hundreds of years. The only reason why it's not part of the Greek Orthodox, or what we call the Greek Orthodox now, is because geography and Roman conquerors conquering, it got not so much Roman, but it got separated by like the Germanic tribes. After Rome conquered everything, things started getting split up, and the Eastern Orthodox were ruled by similar kinds of rulers, and the people that ended up becoming Roman Catholic were ruled by different kinds of rulers who didn't recognize the rulers. They're their enemies. So they started putting a mythos that but this specific seat in Italy and Vatican, what ended up becoming Vatican City. This was the one that Peter planted. This is the one that Peter started. And that might be true. It might not be. That's beside the point, really.
Yeah.
But that's the mythology about why the Roman Catholics. So that was really the most important disciple. I mean, despite the Book of John saying differently.
Well, it was basically the king of Jerusalem became the king pope, or kind of vice versa. The Roman Catholic king became the king pope. And now we call it the Pope, but he's basically just a king of a decentralized group of different little, sects too. There's different sects in the Catholic Church, but it's, there's still a king, and he's out there talking about foreign policy and stuff like that. So I just, he does. He hires his army from the Swiss, but
over 1,000 years of being giving political power outside the church has completely distorted what the seat of Rome was supposed to have been. It was supposed to be a place that advised kings and rulers, not a place that ruled. And so, I mean, you nailed it on the head. But because of that, it's changed the dynamic of the Pope, where we don't even know who the leaders of the Eastern Orthodox Church are. I mean, we would have to type up, like do they have popes? Do they have bishops? Like, what is their structure? Not that we couldn't find it, but the Coptic Church, I think we talked a little bit about this a couple weeks ago. That was the third. That was bigger than the Roman Catholic Church for at least 100, 200 years. But when new political authority came into power, they used the Pope. They made deals with the Pope to be able to have the religious power to be able to easier conquer other lands and stuff. And whereas the Greeks, the Orthodox, they didn't use their power in that way. They so it's, because the Russian Orthodox is closer to the Greek Orthodox than it is to Roman Catholic. But what's kind of cool, and I think this is really, really interesting, just from a church history perspective, or maybe a world history perspective, is the group that separated themselves from the rest of the church has had the curse of everybody else separating from them. So first it was the Church of England, and that was a purely political move, like had nothing to do with religion whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then you had the various forms of Reformation, the most famous one being Luther's Reformation. So you have the Lutheran Church that came out of this. You have the Anabaptist Revolution, where Anabaptists and Mennonites and later Quakers come from that kind of branch. You have the Zwinglian / John Calvin Revolution or Reformation, and you get this weird cross between Church of England, Lutheran, and Mennonite. But no art is allowed except for a cross. Like that's the only art that's allowed in a church. And out of all of these, that's still the most influential one in American culture. I mean, it's starting to lose its way, but it's still like the number one dominance of like what you can and can't put in a church. Like, well, we can't put in idols, but we can put in words of scripture, which we'll worship. So it's become an idol. Then from Church of England specifically, because my branch comes from that Church of England, a guy who's doing missionary work during the 1700s or in the 1800s in America, realized, 1700s, sorry. And then the American Revolution happens. Well, they can't call themselves Church of England anymore, so they become Methodist,
Episcopal,
Methodist Episcopal, and founded by John Wesley primarily, even though John Wesley never left the Church of England. And then from that, you have most, if not all, of the denominations that populate America right now. So one branch was the Disciples branch, led by Stone and Campbell. And Stone and Campbell their followers got in arguments, which led to first the formation of the Disciples of Christ, and then break-offs of that into the Church of Christ and the Christian Church. Then in another branch from Methodist, where a lot of people thought they lost their way because they were so focused on individual enlightenment. A group of several different groups broke off, including the Salvation Army, the Church of the Nazarene, and then this wild group out in California that had what was it called? It wasn't a revival, but it was the Isuzu revival, which is the heart and soul of the charismatic church, because Assemblies of God came out from at the same time as Nazarenes and Salvation Army, but then there was a Isuzu Street in the early 1900s, late 1800s, and more or less the invention of common terms, tongue speaking, and getting prophecy and stuff. Like it took a different turn because of Isuzu. And but coming from that branch of the charismaticism, you have the Word of God, Calvary Chapel, all of these big, huge churches that are now called non-denominational. These, even if they don't carry all the different things, they came from the Isuzu break-off of the Assemblies of God, Nazarene, and Salvation Army. So, all these little minor denominations, and again, because they broke off from the Roman Catholics, broke off from the Eastern Orthodox. Even in Lutheran, there's 3 basic synods that cover all of United States, and there's some smaller ones as well. But you have like the Missouri Synod, you have the ELCA, and each of them have a completely different stance on stuff. And then you have the people who come from Calvin. And it's so stupid. Like, I don't mean this to say you're stupid if you're from these denominations, but they took on the term Baptist, but Calvin was a part, he wasn't a part of it, but his followers were Zwinglian enough that they killed Baptist and Mennonites and Anabaptists. Like, that's what they did. So the fact that the people who are most devoted to John Calvin now are called Baptists, and they believe very similarly to the Anabaptists that they killed, is just crazy.
Yeah, I know.
And the main thing that makes an Anabaptist is the fact that they don't believe that kids are allowed to be baptized because they can't come to their own consent to follow Jesus. So that's what Anabaptist means. And most of the Baptists, especially Southern Baptists, but even the General Baptist, First Baptist, like it's so funny to me of like these breakdowns and stuff. And then the Methodist has been broken up multiple times, and Episcopalian's been broken up multiple times. But Eastern Orthodox, they're still pretty much the same as they were 2,000 years ago.
Yeah. Well, that's probably because they were less based on power games. So
Yeah.
that's like I was looking that up because you have Rome and then you have New Rome. So New Rome is what Constantine the Great basically called Constantinople originally, and the ecumenical patriarch, which is, I believe, the name of whatever, part of what that's kind of his seat over there. So, let's see. So New Rome remains part of the official title of the Orthodox ecumenical patriarch of that city.
Yeah, and even that term ecumenical, it has a very specific meaning in the church world that I don't know how much it's outside, but it's saying that all the churches work together, that these are the things that they're unified on.
Yeah. And we're the opposite, right? So here's, before we go, here's world's largest religions by population. And this is from 2020. Christians 2.555 billion, Muslims 1.9, and Hindus 1 billion, non-religious 855,000, agnostic 712 million, Buddhist 548, Chinese folk religionists 471 million. So I assume that includes also the Falun Gong and stuff. 146 million atheists. So Jews 14 million.
You said that Christians make up 2.5 billion and Muslims 1.9.
Yeah, and then actual Catholics is, I think I saw 1.3 billion baptized Catholics as of 2019.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see the breakdowns for Muslim, because they have 3 or 4 branches that are just as separate as the Roman Catholics are than other Christians. But I mean, 1.3 billion Catholics, that's probably the biggest population of one specific sect or major sect of a religion.
Well, and with Muslims too, I don't believe that there's any sort of sacred rites that you have to go through to become a Muslim. And
I think it depends on the sect.
Like you have to follow. Let's see. There's no baptism,
right?
So barriers to entry would be lower in that. The fact that you have, 1.3 billion people that went through Christian baptism, that's a lot of people,
Yeah.
Or Catholic baptism. So, because they have a really strict, like I grew up Episcopalian, I'm baptized Episcopalian, and Like, you know, we could go into that for forever. And,
Right.
you know, my family historically are a lot of Quakers and a lot of Episcopal people, a lot of Episcopal priests. And so, you know, that's kind of like my religious cultural history that I come from. If I was to do it again, if I was forced to choose by my own determination, I'd probably become a Jew, or a Buddhist. If I wanted to just join a group.
If you would like to learn more about the New Next podcast, find us at thenewNextPodcast.com, where you can suggest a topic you would like for us to cover. If you enjoyed what you heard, share the podcast, tell a friend about it, or rate us with 5 stars.